Welcome to Unleashing Happiness. I am your host, Cecilia Hendricks, and today we're going to talk about your inner conversations. So I want to dive into the ways that you can use your own inner conversations, either about yourself, to yourself, or to others, to actually make changes in your life. How you can use your focus and your attention when you're having these inner conversations, no matter when you do them, so that you can actually start to live a life that you truly love. Thank you for joining me today. I think the best place to start is actually figuring out what is an inner conversation. So when I am talking about your inner conversations, I am talking about those moments of time that you're maybe reviewing a conversation that you've had, or you're getting ready for a conversation you think is coming. And oftentimes, the majority of people that I speak to, and when I'm looking at myself, and I looked at myself in the past, I found that those inner conversations were usually framed in negativity. So it was going over something either that you didn't enjoy, you kind of wish you had said in the middle of an argument, or you're getting ready for something to not go the way that you want it to. So maybe it's with your spouse or your partner, and you're frustrated about something. And so you're reviewing what that conversation will be with them in the future. It could be something that you are having an inner conversation about yourself to yourself. So either the things that you're not doing, the way you're not showing up for yourself, how you look in your clothing. There could be a whole laundry list of these kind of conversations you're having with yourself internally. It could also be something like you're getting ready to go into work and you are finding that you are focusing on it not going well, that your boss is going to criticize you, that the report that you put together is not going to go over well, that you're overwhelmed and you're stressed with your workday. And these kind of conversations can pop up any time of day about any conversation that you're having. So even if you're working towards a specific goal, you have a desired outcome that you're looking at, and you're working towards this, and then you're having conversations in your mind, like let's say even with a friend, and it's in opposition of it, right? They're either putting you down in your mind, or they're saying you're never going to achieve this, or they don't know why you're working on it. These are the conversations I want you to start paying attention to. And to make any changes in your life, the first thing that you have to do is actually start to become aware. What are the things that you want to change? What is the actual outcome that you'd like to have? What is the end result that would be a solution for you in any area of life? And so I'd like you to either pause this podcast or take note if you're driving to do this later, to write down what areas of life you would like to start paying attention to the type of inner conversation you're having. So if you're working on finding a really loving, amazing relationship, what are those conversations that you're having internally to yourself, about yourself, or with others in your own mind about that topic, about having a loving relationship? Are you talking kindly to yourself? Are you kind of going over and over how you're never going to find somebody? But just start to pay attention, because these inner conversations will highlight to you the state that you're currently dwelling in. What is it that you're focusing on? Where are you placing your attention? And in the areas of life that you're most struggling, it's likely because you're placing your attention on those struggles and those frustrations. So when I talk about changing your daily habits, it's not to try to force something to come into your life. Instead, it's about learning how to essentially let go of this external event that you want to have happen, so that you can start to feel better about yourself and the life that you lead. It's about learning how to really bring up feelings of gratitude, start to focus more on things that make you internally feel good. And so you're not so hyper fixated on the lack of something in your life. So when I talk about doing daily joys, or making sure that you pick up new hobbies, or learning a new language, or something that you can do to better yourself, it's all to take your focus internally so that you feel good. You're showing up for yourself. You're filling your cup. You're making yourself full before worrying about this external event. So when I talk about changing a routine or changing your habits, I'm not talking about changing them to say, I already am so much of this person, I'm going to force a habit. That's not the point. The point is to take your attention away from whatever you're currently lacking and learn how to bring up feelings of gratitude, fulfillment, and happiness. And truly, when you do those things, then everything else starts to fall into place. You can do the techniques to focus on this end result that you want. That's part of these inner conversations, right? But when you learn how to not focus so much on the lack of it and instead learn more how to enjoy your life and enjoy the person that you are and see yourself as worthy and deserving and increase your self-confidence and your self-concept, things start to come into play for you. Any state that you're in is going to dictate the action that you naturally feel you should take. So when you have a identity shift and you're shifting your state and you're starting to focus on becoming this person that you want to be, as you shift, things are going to start to naturally shift with you. And the actions that you're going to take are going to naturally start to shift with you. And oftentimes for myself, I have not noticed these shifts until after. So once I started focusing on really increasing my feelings of gratitude, paying attention to the things that I was doing, and really being honest with myself, if my thoughts, habits, routines, and daily inner conversations were in alignment with the life that I want or in complete opposition. Because I think what happens with a lot of folks, based on my experiences and what I've talked to people, is they'll focus on a specific technique, right? So maybe they'll do like a meditation or a visualization. They'll put together a vision board, do scripting, robotic affirmations, whatever it is. They will focus so strongly on this time, but this time is only maybe 10 minutes of your day, maybe even 30 minutes of your day. But then for the rest of the time, they're actually having conversations internally and feelings internally that are in complete opposition of what they actually want. One of my favorite examples is always someone who wants to have a loved one in their life. So you're looking for a specific person. You definitely want to feel that love from them in your life. And instead, though, you're spending your day wondering why they haven't messaged you, checking your phone 80 times, and seeing the last time that they were online. Those habits and routines are in complete opposition of the actual life that you want. So how can you build up your feelings of self-worth, self-love, and feeling good about the life that you're having so that love can actually come into your life? Because it really all starts with you, and it starts with your internal feelings. And there may be things that sometimes happen that don't make a ton of sense, where you're like, well, I kind of thought that I was feeling pretty negative about this, but it actually ended up coming into my life. Or I focused so strongly on how this was going to play out negatively for me, and that didn't end up happening. And I can't answer that. I know that there's things about this that are just don't always make sense, right? Like the way that the world works and the way that stuff happens doesn't always make sense, but it makes enough sense enough times that I truly believe that you're able to change your life by using your own focus and attention, by deciding what you want and starting to work towards making yourself internally be aligned to that type of person and feeling good about who you are and the life that you have. And that doesn't mean that you have to feel positive all the time. It doesn't mean that you can't ever have a bad day or you can't have any moment that you look at yourself and think, oh, what am I doing? Like, I'm not even focusing the way that I want to, because we're human and that's going to happen. But if you can train yourself how to take those feelings and decide this is just a thought and I don't have to identify with every thought that I have, because there's so many that come into our life every day. And instead, I'm going to identify with the ones that lead to the life that I want. And it sounds so simple, but I also understand that it's not always as simple as it sounds, especially when it's something that you really desperately want in your life. But the more that you can return to this, I promise you, the better off that you'll be. You'll feel better internally, and you'll start to see your external life reflect more of how you feel internally. Because trust me, I'm also all about getting the stuff. I want to feel good, but I also want to lead a life that includes the things that I really want to have. I want to travel. I want the nice house. I want to have the ability to pay my bills and to not be stressed out about it. I want to have freedom in my days. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I'm not necessarily here to just teach people how to feel extremely zen internally, because that's not really where I am either. And I'm going to teach you the things that I've experienced. And I know I've mentioned this on here before, but you really do need to figure out what resonates with you. For some people, what I share is going to resonate very deeply, and you're going to be like, yes, this makes a lot of sense. And I'm able to follow these steps and see the change in my life. And for others, that's not going to happen. And the reason why is because we are each very unique, and what works for us and what resonates is going to be different. We could each sit and listen to, let's say, this podcast episode and walk away with a different understanding. Different things are going to speak to you based on where you are currently. What state are you currently in? And there's going to be different pieces that stand out to you. I definitely noticed this when I was reading Neville Goddard's books. The first time I read them, there was definitely certain things that stood out to me and really grabbed my attention. But as I've gone back to them, each time I read them, something else grabs my attention. There's something that just feels a little differently. My understanding of it is different. My perception of what I'm intaking, what I'm bringing in and consuming has shifted because my understanding and my state has shifted right along with it. But I also believe that every single person has the ability to use these principles to make changes in their life. So whether you call it just like mindset focus, positive attitude, law of assumption, law of attraction, whichever words that you're using, you're able to find the system and like the techniques that work for you so that you can focus in the way that you want and get this to work in your life. This is not a one size fits all. There can be things that resonate with you, and you may listen to this and be like, I don't even have inner conversations. This makes no sense to me. And that's totally fine. And then somebody else is going to be like me, who's like, holy cow, I have this like inner conversation and this narrative running in my head almost all day long. Anytime that I'm really in the car, that's kind of what I'm doing. I go over conversations quite a lot. This is something that really has been a massive change for me in my life, was starting to pay attention to those conversations and making the conscious choice of how I wanted those to go. And this includes either future has not happened yet conversations or ones that have already happened. So I will say that probably one of the biggest, most amazing things that I do not do nearly enough, to be perfectly honest with you, is to review conversations that have already happened, but review them in the way that I wish they had gone. So instead of dwelling on the fact that this did not go the way that I wanted it to, I just go back over the conversation and do it instead in the way that I wish it had gone. What would I have preferred to come out of that conversation? What do I wish I had said that was in alignment with the way I want to be, right? Not like so I could get an extra zing in, unless that's really what you want to do, I guess. But how do I wish this conversation had gone? What do I wish they had said? And what would I have rather I replied with? What would I rather the end result of this conversation be? So instead of going over it a million times of how like terrible this conversation went and it was not well, and at the end I felt so upset, I just review it in the way that I wish it had gone. And the most remarkable thing happens when I actually put focus into this. Whatever I have reviewed and actually changed to say, I wish the conversation had gone this way. And I hold to that. I don't go back to the conversation. I don't then have the quote unquote future conversations that are bringing the same argument and frustration back up. Instead, I really dwell in that this conversation went beautifully. I have actually had things come back and had what I wish somebody had said parroted back to me. And when these things have happened, I've had moments of being like, this cannot be truth. Like, I don't know how in the world this is happening, but it's remarkable. And I will be the first to admit, I have to remind myself to do this. I have to watch my thoughts quite often. I very quickly can find myself doing a mental argument and getting frustrated in my mind. And the more then that plays out for me, the harder it is for me to pull myself out of that. I don't want anybody listening to think that this is like easy peasy, nothing for me. I really put a lot of attention into my own mental focus and what I'm doing, but not to the point that I'm beating myself up, that I'm not giving myself forgiveness, or that I'm angry all the time or obsessive. And that's a very fine balance, because a couple years ago, it was definitely an obsession. And I would get really frustrated with myself. So, when I'm telling you to focus on daily joys, to make sure that you're working on gratitude, the way that you spend your morning, how you're talking to yourself, and start to do the things that just naturally make you feel good and that you enjoy, it's so you can hopefully avoid the obsession that I fell into. And it wasn't like it took over my life, but it was too much. And I didn't like the way that I felt because instead of it feeling good, and this should feel good, like this is amazing, some of the stuff that comes out of this. When I've had people parrot back to me what I imagined our conversation went, I literally just sit there with my mouth agape, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say right now. This is insane. I cannot believe this is happening. And I have no logical response as to how this happens, other than saying that our imagination and what we focus on is actually happening somewhere, and we just need it to be reflected here as well. So there's some connectivity, and I believe that it is prayer with God, the source, the divine, the universe. God is everything. And so when we are all connected through God, we're able to make these shifts and we're able to start to see things the way that we would like them to be. And our brains start to pick up more of this, right? That's like confirmation bias. When I think that I'm lucky and I think that I'm phenomenal and I think that I'm beautiful, I get that reflected back to me from the world. And sometimes that can be a really scary thing to share, especially outwardly on like the podcast, because there may be people who are like, you are off your rocker and you are completely losing it. But I can't deny what I've experienced. And I feel so drawn to share it with everyone listening here because I think it's important. And I think it could really help make changes in other people's lives so that they could feel better and spend more time enjoying the life that they lead. Because really, when you start to look around, there is so much beauty to experience in this world. There's so much happiness and so much joy. And I just really want everybody to be able to experience that in the way that I have. So remember, when you're looking at your inner conversations, start to pay attention to the things that you're talking about in your own mind. How do you speak to yourself? How do you envision your day and your conversations going with your loved ones or your people at work or just anybody that you really have to interact with? And what changes can you do? Either if you're preparing for a future conversation, can you have the absolute most beautiful, amazing conversation in preparation of that talk? And when you're looking back on the past, instead of reviewing what went wrong and what you wish you had said that was not nice, or that they continued to say something that was not nice and hurt your feelings, can you instead review it as if it had gone the way that you wish that it had, that it was this beautiful, amazing conversation that confirmed that you are loved, you are worthy, you are deserving, you are all these remarkably beautiful things. And don't put too much thought into it, at least not at this point. Don't worry about how it works or when it's going to work or what's going to play out for you. Just start focusing internally on the way that you're talking to yourself and the conversations that you're having with others. If you have any questions about this, you can definitely leave me a note down below if you're listening on YouTube, or also you can shoot me an email. It's unleashinghappiness@ceciliahendricks.com. I really like hearing from folks. It's been quite phenomenal, some of the messages that I've gotten. And if you go ahead and use this, I would love to hear from you on how it works for you. And if you think that this would be beneficial to somebody else, by all means, please share the episode. That's like one of the biggest compliments that I ever get is when somebody messages me and they're like, my friend sent me this episode to listen to you and I found it really beneficial, because you could actually be making a change in someone else's life. I hope you have a wonderfully beautiful week, and I will be back next Monday.